to my series on 60s and 70s horror film and fashion. I am Ashley, and for those of you that are new here, I am someone that loves 60s and 70s fashion, film, and especially horror films. I love everything about these decades just because, it's iconic. Everything about it, the colors, it makes people happy. It makes me happy. And hopefully these videos make you happy too. So I am so excited to share my love of not only the horror films of this decade, but also the fashion, the makeup, the hair, and the decor. So let's get into it. This week's film is 1974's slasher Black Christmas. This was one of the first slasher films made, and it inspired a lot of others to follow. But it slightly is forgotten, which is really crazy because I've asked a lot of people about this film and they're like, what? But it is shot just so amazing and it really sets the tone for horror movies to come. We're not only going to talk about the film itself and how iconic it was to the horror genre, but we're also going to talk about the fashion, the makeup, the hair, and also the decor. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the film, 1974's Black Christmas. 1974's Black Christmas was one of the first slasher films out there. It is about a group of sorority sisters that are stalked and murdered by a killer hiding in their house during Christmas break. Inspired by urban legends and also real murders, this film takes you through a very suspenseful event during Christmas break at a sorority. It highly influenced the slasher genre, inspiring the likes of John Carpenter and the movie Halloween, which is one of my favorites. And it's in that 70s genre, so you know we're going to go and look at that film because there are some not only iconic filmmaking in that film, but also the fashion and the hair and everything about it. It screams 70s. So that one will definitely be on the radar for maybe coming up real soon on our series. The film was very suspenseful, and the atmosphere played a big role in how it was shot. And it had a lot of innovative camera techniques that were never used before, but they're real familiar for a lot of people in films like Halloween, where again, John Carpenter was really inspired by the way they made this film using the killer's point of view in a lot of the shots. And hearing the killer's breathing and his walking and things like that. Again, you see that in the likes of Michael Myers in the film Halloween. The other thing that's really, I think, interesting about this film is it's based a lot on urban legend. And as I was watching this, I was like, yeah, that's something that I think, everybody fears. And there's a lot of little urban legends in this film that really stand out. And I'm not gonna lie, definitely after I watched it, a lot of lights were turned on and I was looking behind like curtains and in closets before I went to bed. So that was super fun. It also was inspired by real murders in Montreal in 1943, which kind of creeps you out a little bit even more after learning that because you're like, yeah, this could really happen. And it was even funny to me because my husband had said, I didn't think you were gonna like this one because it's kind of realistic, and he knows me really well. Horror films that are more realistic, they creep me out. It's not that I don't like them. I think it just scares me a little bit more to the fact that like that could happen. Things like, like Devil's Rejects by Rob Zombie, that one again, like freaks me out. Like that could really happen. People like that exist. Like, so for me, those movies they freak me out a little bit more. Instead of those movies like, like a Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street, those are fun for me, not as scary. So that's just something to think about going into this film. This might not be the horror film for you or the genre that you like. I liked it, but it scared me in a way that's different from like a Freddy Krueger. The other thing that was really different about the film is that the ending was kind of left in a way that not a lot of films had been left before. And spoiler alert right here, so if you've never seen it, go watch it and then come back. But The ending leaves it where the killer is still at large. And also, the final girl, she's still in danger. So it ended just kind of like on that note and with the phone ringing, which just like I remember like when the film ended, I was like, that's it. They're not even gonna give like a backstory of the killer or anything like that. And that kind of like bothered me because I think it scared me because I was like, he's still out there. And that's something too that kind of makes this film so different and so good at the same time. It definitely leaves it on that note where you're like, well, what happened? And, that's something that stands out and makes this film so, so different. And you can see that influence in John Carpenter's Halloween, where he left the first Halloween, where it was kind of like, is Michael Myers still alive? Like, is this final girl going to be okay? And another thing that, this film did was it made the impact of the phrase final girl. That final girl at the end, um, that led the way to Laurie Strode in Halloween and Miss Jamie Lee Curtis being the iconic final girl that she is. So we would never have a final girl if it wasn't for this amazing movie. And I love that. And I think it is something that is, I'm going to rewatch it again because it's like, I liked it. It scared me, and definitely gave me a lot of anxiety. But I think second round, I'll have less of that anxiety because I know what happens. But it definitely is a really suspenseful film. I will say that for me, I enjoyed it in a way that's different from most horror films. Again, it genuinely scared me. It wasn't like a fun horror movie, like a Nightmare on Elm Street or for me like the Jason movies like Friday the 13th. Like it was more of like ooh like creep factor. So that's something to think about going into this film. Now let's talk about some of the standout areas in this film. And one of those areas is going to be how they use the POV shots. They use these a lot in the film to showcase what the killer is doing. And I love that. Going into this, I had seen Halloween before. So to me, I was like, oh, it's like Halloween, but in reality, Halloween was influenced by this movie. So I think honestly, the way that they did it was creepier. The way that they had this killer like breathing and like mumbling and saying weird things and you know, that made it 10 times more intense. And also just showcasing, they would show his hands doing things and all of these kind of little like movements that it creeped you out in reality. The breathing, especially, and the humming and the mumblings of, this character. That really was a standout part for me. I loved it. I thought it made it a lot more scarier. And without it, I don't think it would have been as creepy as it was. And they start out the movie with the POV. So it really kind of gets you engaged. And I think for me, that made the first part of the movie better because I thought the first part of the movie, it kind of was really slow. The good parts were showing the point of view of the killer, to be honest. Now, something else that really stood out was that first murder. Um, and there isn't a murder for a while. I felt like into the movie after this first kill. And with this first murder, like New Fear Unlocked, the murderer is behind things in someone's closet. And when I tell you, I looked in the closet that night after I watched this movie, I did. Like, it freaked me out. Like, to think that someone's like in your closet, like in your bedroom, like such an intimate place. Like, that's so, so creepy. So for me, that I thought was really great how they did that because, like, it could happen and how creepy is that and how unexpected. And again, the way that they used the plastic that was like supposed to be covering clothes, and that is how he killed her. He suffocated her. And this is, I think, really kind of a cool kill in the fact that the way afterward they continue to show that girl with the plastic over her is just so creepy, and it leaves an imprint in your brain. And they use that throughout the movie and even at the end of the movie, and you can see her like as they zoom out the window. That is an iconic image. It is like the image of Michael Myers up the stairs. It is like the image with Freddy when he puts his glove up. That is an iconic horror image to me. Another shot that was really, I thought, done really well was finally there was a second kill. And it was the older woman that took care of everybody in the sorority. And I kind of was like, oh man, this poor lady, she's probably gonna get killed. I kind of saw that coming. And the way that they do it is, I just think, really different. Again, they use a lot of point of view of the killer. And then they don't, in this film, which I think is really cool, there's not a ton of blood, and it's not like the slashers after. Um, they use more suspense in this film and more kind of like shock. And with this second kill, it kind of showcases that, where she gets hit in the head and they don't show it per se. And what they do is, as it's gonna hit her, they like go to like a zoom in of the taxi driver knocking on their door. And I thought that was really cool because I was like expecting to see something, and then you go to that and you're just like, whoa, like, and again, it goes back to, it's creepier kind of and scarier not seeing it and imagining what it was in your head than seeing it on screen. And I think they did a great job at that in this film. Another great POV shot that like probably will stay in my brain forever as one of the creepier moments in the film was the shot where the killer is rocking the dead girl with the plastic over her head. She's holding a doll, and he's like singing almost like a lullaby. It is the creepiest thing. And you're just like, what is wrong with this killer? Like, and they never explain it. So, like, for me and in my brain, I'm thinking he escaped from like an institution, and he just chose this house, and he's going to kill these people. And he has some problems in his brain, you know? But I don't know. There was no explanation of who he was, where he came from, and why he was doing what he was doing. But that image was definitely creepy and definitely made you think of like, hey, what could be wrong with this person? What's the motive and what he's doing? Now, near the end, definitely gets better pace. You get a little bit on the edge of your seat, which I loved. Not a lot of blood, not a lot of showcase of like the gore that you see in later slasher films, which it's interesting. Yes, this is a slasher film, but it's not the type that you think of when you think of slasher. When you think of slasher, you do think of like a lot of gore, a lot of like cheesy kills, like kills that you're like, that was kind of cool, like, a la Friday the 13th. This one, a lot more suspenseful and a lot more kind of like what did really happen in that. And a couple things that happened were kind of like just like classic, of course, you find out the calls are coming from inside the house. Like I called that. I'm like, they're gonna come from inside the house. Again, because that's like an urban legend that you hear a lot. And the other is, when you're yelling at that final girl, like, don't do that. Like, there's a point where she has the ability to run out the front door and go to safety. And what does she choose? First, she chooses violence because she gets like a weapon, but also she chooses to go upstairs where the killer is. And I know she meant well. She wanted to make sure her friends were okay and call me like selfish, but my butt would have been like, good luck to you. I'm gonna go outside because, like, I don't know. I panic in those situations, and like I don't want to die. So I would absolutely be like, I'm gonna go outside, not gonna go upstairs because probably shouldn't. And that really, when she does go upstairs, leads to kind of like the final, result of what happens at the end of the film. And what I love, there was a lot of twists in the film that I think keep you guessing. But also too, you're like, that's too easy. Because my first thought was, it's the boyfriend. It's the boyfriend. Like, he kind of flipped out a little bit. Like, I think it might be him. And then I was like, that's gotta be too easy. Like, there's something else going on here. And I think I knew when she like killed the boyfriend, the way it was like wrapping up, I was like, this is like too good to be true. Like, it's suspicious. And as soon as everyone left that house, I was like, the killer is still there. He's still there. And when you then, hear the killer upstairs and you hear the phone ring at the very end, you're like, wow. And for me, like I like yelled at the TV. I was like, why didn't the cops check everywhere in the house? Like, but that's, one of those things that, they didn't. And that's why that it made this movie so great, like, and made you guessing at the end because, whew, yeah, I was a little mad at the cops over that, but it is what it is. And that phone ringing at the end, it was just like, I was like, oh man, where is this gonna go? And the credits roll up, and I'm like, okay. But that's again what makes it such an iconic movie. And you can see how influenced John Carpenter was by this movie, like the way that he shot things, the way that the a movie Halloween ended. Like I see the brilliance he took from this movie and made it his own, which is amazing. And then you see a lot of that in the remakes with Rob Zombie. And I know a lot of people don't like the remakes of Halloween by Rob Zombie. I like them. I consider them they're just a different breed. There's something different. It's not Halloween like remade. It's his version of Halloween, which his movies are different, and they're filmed a lot differently, but they still use those POV shots that are super creepy. And he does a good job at that. He just answers more questions, which I thought was interesting because we're all wondering those things. We were all wondering why did Michael Myers do what he did? And you ask yourself this in Black Christmas, why did this killer do what he did? And I would love to see like Rob Zombie's take on Black Christmas. I think that could be kind of cool. So overall, I think it was a really good 70s horror classic, and definitely a good start for that slasher genre. I think it definitely could have been faster paced in the beginning. Other than that, it was a good horror movie. It creeped me out. And I haven't been like that creeped out in a while where I've had to like put the lights on and things like that. So for me, like I definitely would recommend this movie. You may though, I'll give a disclaimer, have to sleep with the lights on after you watch it. All right, now let's talk about the fashion in the 1974 classic Black Christmas. And there was some great 70s fashion in this film. But first, let's kind of talk about the fashion in 1974 when the film was made. Fashion was defined by a mix of casual, comfortable styles and the rise of disco-influenced glamour. Some key trends in that time were high-waisted pants, jeans. Some key trends in that time were high-waisted, flared pants and jeans, wrap dresses, and wide-collared tops. So some key influencers from 1974 in fashion were Cher. She wore a lot of different designs in this time. Bianca Jagger was another great fashion influencer in 1974 that wore a lot of tailored white suits and just had a style of her own that influenced the generation. Twiggy, one of my favorites, was another fashion icon in 1974 that led the way in trends, but also was on the cover of Vogue throughout that year. And the fashion in this film really does showcase that, and we're going to touch on it. But also, let's talk about the hair of 1974, and that's something big in this movie as well. Hair in 1974 was really embracing natural styles. Things like long centered parted styles, volume with layers, and iconic choppy shag haircuts. Now, makeup in 1974 was very natural. There was a lot of concentration on more emphasizing the glow of the skin and also bushy eyebrows and natural lips. And you see that a lot in this film, and we're going to touch on that. So, kicking things off in the movie with that fashion is Margaret Kidder, who you might also recognize from Amityville Horror. She's into the horror films, I guess. And she plays a great role in this film. She is a bossy, kind of bratty and drunk sister of the sorority. And she starts the film strong with this amazing choker, which was really influenced by hippie bohemian style and like a rocker style in 1974. And I thought that really stood out to me. I thought it was cool. I love a good choker. I think they look great. And she rocks this in that first scene that you see her, and it really stood out to me. The second look that stood out to me is the final girl. Her name is Jess in the film, and she is played by Olivia Hussey. And the outfit, which she has on pretty much for the whole film, and I believe she takes the sweater off halfway through, so she's in like the same outfit, but she kind of just takes a couple layers off. And what I loved is she has this again, which was really popular in 1974, a collared shirt. It's in this really beautiful yellow color, almost like a mustard yellow. And she has a sweater over that. It has these hands on it. I love the look. It's really iconic. She has some bell bottoms on. Most of the cast are wearing amazing bell bottom pants or jeans, which really was a staple of this decade. I absolutely loved it, and I thought the collared shirt stood out a lot. It made me feel like I was right back in the 70s, and I love that. And I'm a big fan of those collared shirts because they're a staple piece. If you're starting to build a vintage wardrobe, you can really pair it with a lot of different things under like a jumper. You can wear it alone with a pair of jeans or pants. There's so many things you can do with it. So, if you are starting a vintage wardrobe, which I am, that was one of the first pieces that I got, and I'm able to wear it with a bunch of different things. And I absolutely love the way that she wears it in this film throughout the whole movie. There's a lot of cool also to like layering going on in this movie. There's at one point, one of the girls has a shawl over her. It's like a black shawl. Shawls were very popular in the 70s, and ponchos. So for me, that stood out, and that piece can go with a lot of different things. Again, if you're starting that vintage journey. And the outerwear in this movie is so good and so iconic. Even the background extras, I'm like, I love that like outfit. I love the coat and the hat. And my eyes kept going towards that rather than like maybe than the main character in certain scenes, especially when the dad's waiting for his daughter. There's a couple extras that walk by in these amazing coats and hats and winter gear that are just so 70s and so cool. And I really want to find some of those looks. And a couple of the main characters had great like outerwear. One was the pink hat that Jess has on when she's meeting with her boyfriend. It's like this oversized pink beret, and I absolutely love it. If you know me and follow me on Instagram, at Rody Style, I love berets. I pair them with outfits a ton, and I just think they're a great look. But this one is kind of like oversized, and I definitely want to add one of those to my arsenal of berets. Also, Margaret Kidder's character, when they're at the police station, has on a gray outdoor look. She has like this blue hat on with a like really great jacket. It has a lining to it, and I love this look. I think this is again iconic 70s look. Um, Jackets and hats like this were extremely popular and made popular by a lot of different like artists, singers, and things like that. Where I always think of the hat that she's wearing, I always think of the Jackson Five because they wore hats like this a lot, and they're so cool. They are still, I feel like, relevant now. You see people wearing them still now, and I love that. And I have one of them, and I love pairing it with all kinds of different things. And it just gives the whole outfit a different look and a different vibe. Then again, Margaret Kidder in this film has like the best fashion. I feel like she has the best like wardrobe changes. She has a lot of different outfits in this film. And the one where she's just completely drunk. And she is wearing this black, and I couldn't tell if it was a dress or a shirt, a really long shirt. It's a black, let's say, dress, and it has a flower right here and a flower on each sleeve. And it's very bohemian looking, classic boho look. Almost, hippie, kind of a rocker look. Reminded me of something that maybe like Bianca Jagger would wear, and it is so nice. It looks, number one, so comfortable, but number two, it is just a simple bohemian hippie, dress or shirt, not sure which one it is, that I would love to have. And I thought it was great, and I want one. I need to find that very badly. So if you know where to find it, comment below. And again, with the collared shirts, another collared shirt that stood out, which I laughed to myself that I liked this, but it was the older woman. She had on a like flowered, it was just really bright colors, collared shirt underneath something that she was wearing. And I was like, I would wear that. I love the way that the design is on it, but also I just love a good collared shirt. So this was represented throughout the movie. A lot of the characters did have on those collared shirts. And again, it just goes back to the fashion in 1974. That was like a big piece of the fashion puzzle, so to speak, in 1974. And overall, this movie's fashion was amazing. I loved it. There were times where I was like, I need to pick up my app and see if, on Depop, see if they have that. So if you love 70s fashion, I think this is a great movie to check out, and get some ideas, get some style inspiration from it. The hair was really basic, was very much what 1974, characteristics of hair were. It's very natural, a lot of parted down the middle. There was one girl that had, really extra curly hair. It could have been permed, it might have been her natural, not sure, but that really was different from all the other girls. They had that classic, just natural straight hair look. There was a scene that really stood out for me with Margaret Kidder. Again, just iconic fashion. She had these really great curtain bangs, and there were pieces like hanging out, and she had her hair up, and it was just a really beautiful 70s look. But what cracked me up is that that is still like classic and popular today. The curtain bangs came back full swing with hair, and it's something that somebody would actually wear today. And some of like the outfits itself, I'm like, somebody would wear that today, which just says how amazing the fashion was in this movie. Now, the makeup, again, very natural. A lot of it was because it is at a sorority. These are college girls. They weren't like going out and doing anything crazy. They were just at their sorority house. But also, that was kind of the style at the time of a natural look. Unless you were maybe going to a disco, you really weren't doing much with your skin. It was really glowy with like a tinted moisturizer, maybe, and something natural on the lips. And that was a really just testament to 1974 and the time. But the fashion is really what stands out. The hair and the makeup, yeah, they're 1974 looks. They're nothing that you're going to be like, oh, it is more of a fashion show than hair and makeup in this movie for sure. Now, lastly, let's talk about the decor. The decor in 1974 and this amazing film. So first, in 1974, what was popular in home decor? Well, it was defined by bold, earthy, and expressive styles, featuring colors like avocado green, harvest gold, and burnt orange. Also, chocolate brown. So these tones, just like behind me, very similar, minus the blue, were really popular in the home. And also, some popular trends that you would find in homes are going to be shag carpeting in those colors that I mentioned. Macrame, which has come back full swing. I have some in my home, and that was really popular. Wood paneling, and also heavily patterned and textured wallpapers, which you do see in this film. Now, what stood out in the movie? First things first, first scene, the killer's walking upstairs in the sorority house. It's a POV shot. It is the hallway. I love it, and it is super 70s. From the shag carpet that is like this burnt orange. It's so good. The only thing I think about though is like cleaning that would be just like awful. The curtains, they have a flower pattern on it. It is the colors that I mentioned before, like orange and brown, and they're just great. They're great 70s curtains. And lastly, the wallpaper in this hallway is has patterns on it. Again, it also is brightly colored in the colors that I mentioned before, and I love it. And the wallpaper in this movie is great in multiple scenes, in the girls' bedrooms, in the hallway, even going downstairs. The wallpaper is just iconic. I love 70s wallpaper. And then also, not only the carpets, because there is a lot of shag carpet in this movie, and I love that, but the chairs. I noticed this in the living room of the sorority house. They're like flowered pattern. They stand out because I feel like downstairs it was more of like a rustic look. They had like a fireplace, and that was like the accent piece that made it like a talking point in the room. It made it stand out. It was like the chairs, because you had this shag rug that was one color, and then the chairs that were like kind of the centerpiece, which I thought were really, really cool. And I just love, like, there's so many shots of the shag rug in this film. And not only is the shag rug on the floors, but it's on the stairs. Like, they have shag carpeting everywhere in the sorority house, and it is so great. And I love that. And it even goes down to the girl that gets murdered first. They go into her room, and she has an amazing, again, wallpaper in her room. But also, I love that they show like what would a 1970s, girl in college have in her room. And it shows that. It shows posters that they would have up. And it would show, the decor that they had in their rooms. And I loved seeing that because it was, a number one, a good representation of the time, but number two, it was just iconic. It's like, I love all of these posters and the things in these rooms. It's like a time capsule. And I love the look of 70s home decor. So again, I'm getting ideas as I'm watching this film, even though people are being murdered throughout. I'm getting ideas for home decor. Crazy, right? But it is a good representation of what the 70s were like in maybe a home, sorority house, whatever it is going to be, decor wise. And so I think it gives you, number one, good inspiration, but number two, it really takes you back to that time, which I love about 60s and 70s movies. You're like kind of like infused into that time and taken to another place, not only with the story, but with the decade that you're in. Now, overall, this movie was so good. Such a good slasher classic, that again, people use this influence in movies for decades to come. So if you've never seen 1974's Black Christmas, you need to see it. The film is great. The fashion is taking you back to exactly 1974. And of course, the decor. It's like a time capsule of a home in 1974. And if you are into both horror and fashion, this movie is the perfect combination. So make sure you check out 1974's Black Christmas, and also be on the lookout for the next video. And I put a poll up on YouTube to see which next 60s or 70s horror film you want to see. So it is between two movies, so make sure you check that out. But also make sure you like, share, and subscribe so that you can see more content of 1970s and 60s horror film and fashion series. So until next time.